Okay, I think we're still waiting on one person, but they speak later, so we can go ahead and get started if that's okay with everybody. We're likely going to keep everybody's mics muted unless and until you're speaking. And if anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Can everyone hear me okay? Excellent. All right. Hi, I want to welcome everyone to our Marylanders' first ever virtual advocacy night. I am Karen Herron. I'm Legislative Director at Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence. I am a lawyer and a mom. I came to gun violence prevention work in the wake of the Sandy Hook tragedy. I had a first grader at the time, and I have spent the years since then watching my own child grow older and hit milestones while being reminded that an entire class of his peers will never get that chance. My son is now a high school freshman. He has spent his entire educational experience with lockdown drills and stories of gun violence perpetrated at schools, at malls, at movie theaters, and the list goes on. Tonight, we are here to address one way to make a difference. This event has been organized by Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence with support from the Critical Issues Forum, a Jewish-run advocacy organization in Montgomery County, and the Maryland chapter of March for Our Lives. Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence is a statewide organization dedicated to reducing gun violence. We do this through preemptive strategies like programs for at-risk children, the telling of victim stories, violence prevention and intervention coalition work, and legislation. So I'm gonna try to share my screen with you now. Let's see if this can work. Share screen. All right, is everyone seeing, oops, of course I'm at the end of the presentation rather than the beginning. Okay, we're all getting better at technology these days, right? Okay, so tonight we are here to focus in on one area of our 2021 legislative agenda, HB 200, Jaelynn's Law, Child Firearm Access Prevention. We are joined tonight by the bill's sponsors, Senator Smith and Delegate Stein, and hopefully Delegate Bartlett. I'm going to start off by explaining what CAP is, why it is needed generally, and in Maryland specifically. After that, we will hear from Jaelynn Wiley's mother, Melissa Wiley, pediatric intensivist, Dr. Catherine Hoops, and then March for Our Lives Representative Jackson O'Mara will introduce our bill sponsors. There will be some time left over to entertain questions. Feel free to put questions in the chat and we'll save time to respond to as many as possible. Safe storage laws are intended to modify gun owner behavior in regards to the methods used to store firearms. The idea is not to restrict or remove the ability to own or possess a firearm, but to influence gun owners to store weapons in the most prudent manner possible. So why focus on CAP? We focus on CAP for a number of reasons. Number one, because every year in Maryland, there are children who are killed, injured, or who suffer a life-altering event because an adult failed to properly secure a weapon. In fact, on Christmas Day, an Anne Arundel family tragically lost their 17-year-old son to a child access case when his 13-year-old friend discharged the firearm she was handling. The cases range from those of mishandling firearms to self-harm to intentional harm of others. Number two, gun sales have skyrocketed in this last year. This is especially true in Maryland, which saw background checks at much higher rates than the national average. A significant portion of those background checks were for new gun owners. And three, strong child access prevention laws actually work. Researchers have found that when states enact or strengthen their safe storage laws, there is a direct impact on storage behavior and subsequent risk and harm rates. Household guns are a major source of shootings involving children. It follows that more guns in homes will lead to more risk unless we adopt behaviors to counter. Far too many gun owners bring a firearm into their home perceiving a threat or need for self-defense, only to raise the risk of harm to their family and friends because of the easy access to the weapon. Storing firearms locked and unloaded out of access to children and youth can and does prevent youthful impulsive acts and unintentional shootings. In addition to the fact that a wide majority of youth gun violence stems from easy access to a firearm, we must also address the fact that 380,000 guns are stolen annually in the US. Adequate storage helps to prevent firearms from being easily accessed by anyone who doesn't have the authority to possess the weapon. Stolen guns make up a significant percentage of firearms that are later used in crime. And following the data, good cap laws appear to lead to at least a 30% reduction in child firearm access incidents. Maryland does currently have a child firearm access law. However, it applies only to youth under 16, and the maximum penalty for a violation is a $1,000 fine. The new legislation will raise the age to under 18, apply to unloaded and loaded firearms, and provide a 3-tiered system of penalties to be placed commensurate with the harm caused. I would note as an aside that we are cognizant of the concern that many people have that our criminal justice laws often have the disproportionate effect of locking up more Black and brown people. We believe that by creating a clear tiered system tied to the facts in any given case, that this system will not have a disproportionate impact on minority communities. It will, however, help to trigger firearm prohibition laws in those cases where harm has actually been caused. Lastly, gun legislation is definitely not the only way to address gun violence. But when we know that gun legislation works, when there is data to support its effectiveness, we prioritize the legislative approach. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce Melissa Wiley. Melissa's daughter, Jaelynn, was tragically shot and killed at Great Mills High School in St. Mary's County when a 17-year-old gained access to his father's firearm and brought it to school. We bring this legislation in the hopes that it may prevent tragedies like this from happening in the future. Melissa, are you ready? Would you like to say a few words? I'm going to turn this slideshow off. So let me just stop sharing my screen.
Yes.
And whenever you're ready, go for it.
Hi. First, I just want to say thank you for having me to speak tonight. I've been thinking about this for a week now, like what I was going to say, what I wanted to say, and really while I think we all know why a law like this could be helpful to having children access guns, I think I want you to know more about Jaelynn. Jaelynn was 16. She was a swimmer at Great Mills High School and a club swimmer. She had just made a record in her swimming. She, the weekend before, had just gone and looked at prom dresses because she was asked to the prom on Valentine's Day. She was a very, very sweet girl, and I don't say that because she was mine, or she is mine. She just had a very sweet, calming presence. I would get up every morning and I would go shower, and she would have breakfast for her and I ready by the time I came out. She was always one step ahead of me. I'm a mom of now 10 children. At that time we had 9. And she just had that presence, and that calming presence for the kids, for all of them. She was a well-liked girl in school. She had good grades, and like I said, was a pretty good swimmer. It's even almost 3 years. In March, it will be 3 years. The impact of a school shooting, or any shooting, I'm assuming, but the impact is undescribable. You can't imagine. It doesn't just stop after, the funeral happens and everybody else goes on with their life. There's this part of this family, our family, that is just, it just continues every single day. It is asked about several times a week. What happened to Jaelynn? I have little ones still. What happened to Jaelynn? Was she hurt? Who did it? Why? When we go to the cemetery, what's a funeral? Why is Jaelynn here? At 3, my little guy, the other day says, I miss Jaelynn, and tears just came down his face. And he was only 11 months old at that time. To try to help prevent another family to go through what we have been through, if it's only one that we can help make a difference, then I will come speak to you as many times as you want, or as over and over and over, to share Jaelynn's story, and to just try to help at least, if not one family, if there's more, but one would be good. So I think you all know why it would be a good thing to do some kind of law like this, and to have it in Jaelynn's name is just, as sad as the situation would be, it would be an honor for her, I think, to have that kind of, just to help somebody. So
Thank you, Melissa.
thank you.
Thank you for telling us about Jaelynn. And Liz and I listened to you earlier today talk about her siblings and her interaction and talking about her even today. So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
The next up, we have Dr. Catherine Hoops. Dr. Hoops is a pediatric intensivist. She cares for critically ill children in pediatric intensive care unit of Johns Hopkins. She also holds a master's degree in public health and is core faculty in the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Policy and Research. Dr. Hoops has agreed to lend her experience and support to Jaelynn's Law. Dr. Hoops, I will turn it over to you.
Thank y'all so much for having me, and Karen for the introduction. So being a pediatric intensivist means I care for critically ill and injured children. And my institution is the Level 1 Pediatric Trauma Center for our region. So as core faculty on our neuro and trauma team, I care for critically injured patients every day in my clinical practice. And as a public health researcher, I'm tempted to lead with a lot of data, but really it's what Mrs. Wiley said that matters the most. I will add a couple of numbers to reiterate what Karen already told us. So every year in the US, about 120 to 150 children die because of unintentional firearm injuries. Firearm injuries remain the second leading cause of injury death among toddlers, school-age children, and adolescents. In our pediatric trauma program at Johns Hopkins alone, we see 8 to 12 firearm injured patients every year on average. It's more for 2020, I will say. And this may seem like a small number compared to the nearly 400 firearm injured patients seen every year by our adult trauma service. But I really believe, as a physician, as a public health researcher, and as a gun owning parent, that 8 to 12 per year is 8 to 12 too many. And the changes proposed in this bill are necessary steps to saving more lives and preventing injury by firearms. In my career, I've cared for nearly 100 gun injured children and young people, many of whom have died as a result of their injuries. And some people find this hard to believe, but I remember them all. Their lives, their stories, they breathe purpose into my work as a researcher and an advocate. And I count myself blessed to be able to do the work that I do. I think often about a young man that I cared for as a pediatric trainee who ended his life using a handgun kept in his father's nightstand. That young man would be alive if that gun had been unloaded in a lock safe or gun cabinet. Jaelynn would be with us, and so many others. So today, 1 in 3 children in the US lives in the home with a firearm. We know from studies done in our institution that fewer than half of gun owners report safely storing all of their guns. So when 75% of children report knowing where the firearms are stored in their homes, failure to store guns safely will result in tragedy. Safe storage, as compelled by strong child access prevention laws, prevent unintentional injury, intentional injury, including school shootings, as Karen said, and suicide among children and adults, I'll add. So much of what I see as an intensivist is not preventable. So when we can spare one parent the unimaginable suffering of the loss of a child, I think we have to. And when we can save the life of one child, I think we have to. And this law stands to prevent many life-altering or deadly injuries, and I think we have to. So thank y'all so much for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Hoops. Next up, we're going to turn it over to March for Our Lives leader, Jackson O'Mara, who will help introduce our legislators.
Hey everyone, again, I want to echo the thank you so much for being on this webinar. It's very exciting to see that we have like 60 people that wanted to hear about this tonight, because CAP legislation is something very, very near and dear to our hearts at March for Our Lives. Yeah, so I'm excited to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is one of our sponsors of the bill, Senator Will Smith. I've worked with him over the last couple of years, and Senator Smith is the perfect example of a public servant. So I will pass the mic to him now for some remarks, but everyone welcome Senator Smith.
Hey, well, good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. Jackson, thank you for the introduction. Good to see you, and I've really enjoyed working with you, and you've been an inspiration for all of us. So every time you come down, it's a really compelling testimony, and it's well-researched, and just all of your advocacy work behind the scenes. So I just want to say thank you for everything you've done. Also, I see Liz. We've been working together since I've been in the Assembly, so good to see you. And obviously, Karen, thank you for all of your work. Delegate Stein, good to see you. We'll see each other tomorrow. And then most importantly, Melissa, thank you for your continued work on this issue. Obviously, having gone through what you went through, it's easy to kind of turn away from the system, but you've actually turned towards our system and engaged and stepped up, and you are going to make a difference. You already have made a difference, but we're going to make sure we handle our end of the bargain. So I just want to say thank you for your continued engagement and courage. So just thank you for that. Look, I think you've heard what the mechanics of the bill. We actually ended up getting the legislation through the Senate and off the floor the last day of our legislative session before we closed early because of the pandemic. And that was the first time that happened, literally since the Civil War. that our General Assembly session ended early. So an altogether unique circumstance. And so that makes it all the more important for us to act quickly this year. But I thought that at least it was important to get it through the Senate because now you have that marker and, we can do it again. No pressure, Delegate Stein, but it was an important marker for us to know that we can do this. And so the Senate is traditionally the more difficult of the two bodies to get legislation of this nature through. And so I thought that was a very encouraging development. I also want to say that, obviously you read the statistics, you're well versed in the mechanics, but even amidst the pandemic, it's kind of highlighted a lot of societal ills and problems, ranging from everything from housing to criminal justice, but also for mental health. And so this law would have been something that I'm sure when we look back would have saved lives and in this short period of time. And had we passed it last year. And so that just, I think to me is a stark reminder that there is an exigency. We do need to act quickly and make sure that we pass it this session so that moving forward, we will save lives. And if you look throughout the nation, the states that have gone through at least some version of cap in terms of the penalties and the strength of the bill and the levels of deterrence, you can see that the data tell us that it works. And so this is something that here in Maryland, it's far past time that we move forward with this. And as someone that's been in the military, someone that's somewhat familiar with weapons, someone that's been studying this issue for a couple of years, I couldn't be more proud to be the sponsor, the lead sponsor of this legislation on the Senate side and to work with my friend, Delegate Stein in the House and all of you. So just for me, our session is going to be a little bit unique this year because it's all going to be through Teams and Zoom and Google Meet. But it doesn't mean your advocacy means a lot. So the letters you write, the phone calls you make, the social media pushes that you push out on your messages through whichever platform of your choice, but it all makes a difference. And so looking forward to working with all of you in the coming weeks and months to get this over the finish line this year. And just want to say thank you for all of your work. This is hard work. And you're spending your time tonight, in furtherance of this issue and effort. So thank you all very much. And I look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, Senator Smith. Next up, we are going to hear from Delegate Stein. Delegate Stein has been our sponsor on the House side for a couple of years now and has been working with us really hard to get this bill into a good shape and we can actually get it through committee and all the way through so we can get this bill passed. But yeah, welcome Delegate Stein.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jackson. And it's a pleasure to be here tonight on talking about such an important issue. And it's great to be here with my friend and Senator and Chairman Smith and Mr. Chairman, you're right. It was great that the Senate passed it, and that means that it's even more important that in the House this coming year that we pass it as well, so that we can have success. Also want to acknowledge one of my colleagues who's on the call, Delegate Jen Terrassa, who's from Howard County, and she and I are fellow committee members on the Environment and Transportation Committee. And most of all, I want to thank Melissa for for a number of years now. I know you've been speaking and sharing story about Jaelynn, and I know it must take an incredible amount of courage. And I certainly as an advocate, but someone who hasn't been personally affected by this issue of child access prevention, I just am so impressed and so appreciative of the continued courage that you show in talking about this issue and talking about Jaelynn. It really, we're hopeful that this will be the year in which it makes a difference. I first learned about this issue, child access prevention, way back in 2012. I'm from Baltimore County, and there was a shooting at Perry Hall High School, one of Baltimore County's high schools, where a student brought in a rifle. And then, of course, soon after that, at the end of 2012, was that terrible tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown. And then, of course, a few years later, the shooting at Great Mills High School in 2018, where Jaelynn lost her life. And it just seems, it is so sad that with regularity we hear stories about where a minor has gained access to a firearm in their home, and either intentionally in some cases or accidentally has used it to cause harm. Karen highlighted some of the statistics that are on how often this happens. And I was really struck. I think this was a couple of years ago, the Washington Post did an analysis of the school shootings that had happened over the past 20 years and where they could identify where the gun that was used by the student shooter had come from. And in 70% of the cases where they could identify the source of the gun, it had come from the student's home. It was a gun that was left unlocked, that was left in the sock closet or the hamper, and available for the student to gain access to and very tragically use. So that's the type of situation we're talking about, and it really just should not happen. We're not talking about taking guns out of the home. We're just saying that if a homeowner is going to have a gun in the home where there are minors, they need to keep it safely away and locked, whatever prevention measure can be taken, so that a minor could not be able to get access to that handgun. So, this is really just something very basic in terms of parental responsibility. So I look forward to continuing this effort this year, and thank you to Marylanders and the other groups that have organized this. And it is a great turnout, and I appreciate that. And I know that reflects the organizing strength of the groups who put together this call, as well as the strong sense that this is something that we need to get done to protect our children, from these types of tragic situations, which have happened. I shouldn't say happen too often, because any one time it happens is too much, but certainly it has happened and sadly with regularity over the past couple of decades. So with that, I'll say thank you again and turn things back over to Jackson.
Thank you so much. And now we have our third legislator tonight, Delegate Sandy Bartlett, who's also been a great help to our organizations, March for Our Lives, as well as Marylanders. So I will pass it over now to Delegate Bartlett.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I apologize for my delay in arrival. I was speaking at another event, but I had a short commute, so here I am. I just wanted to say how proud I am to support this bill, to be a co-sponsor with Delegate Dana Stein. It is, there's been an awareness, obviously, before I heard the bill last year in Judiciary Committee, but my awareness was heightened by the testimony that was presented, and my heart went out to the families who have been affected, simply because a gun was not, or a gun was not properly secured. I have to tell you a quick story. When I was about 9 or 10 years old, my elementary school was within walking distance from my house. It was in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And there was a friend of mine. We just had, for some reason, we had a 3-day fight. Every day after school, I would tell her to meet me and she would tell me to meet her. And we fought for 3 days. And the kids came around and they hollered and, and all of that for 3 days. And for whatever reason, the third day we were back friends again. I don't know how it happened, but my point is that it was ridiculous. It was nonsense. I could not tell you what I was angry with her about, or she with me. Things could have gone a lot differently if we thought or had the mindset to go to either home and to look for a weapon, because at that moment in time there was a heat of anger, or just to even show it off, even to brag, even to threaten, even to appear popular. There's so many things that go in the minds of a juvenile. We want to make sure that we make safeguards available. And so what this bill does is it simply says that you as an adult have the responsibility of securing your arms in a manner in which a child minor cannot have access to it. Now, there is going to be some nuances that are going to be discussed in our committee when this bill is presented. Well, what if it's secured this way? Or what if it's secured that way? Well, that's an actual question. That's why we have a judiciary branch, and that judiciary branch can make an interpretation as to any dispute of the facts. The point is that the law needs to be there to state that there must be secured firearms if they are in the home in a way in which a minor could not get to it and cause harm to someone else. It's a reasonable person standard. It's a reasonable gun owner standard. So the other argument is going to be, well, you're trying to take our guns away, our rights to our Second Amendment away. That argument is easily negated by stating that no, you have the right to have access to your firearm. You don't have the right to leave it on the table or to misplace it to a point where you don't even know where it is. And I think that was part of the testimony that we heard last year in judiciary, where someone said, well, I have so many guns. What if I don't even know where it is? Well, that in itself is a problem. So like I said, I'm very happy to and honored to support this bill. I want to do everything that we can to get the bill passed. And I hope that that in the criminal, I serve in the criminal justice subcommittee and the criminal procedure and criminal subcommittee. And I hope that this bill comes up for a vote. I will do everything I can to get it to come up for a vote. And I look forward to voting favorably and supporting this bill and getting it on the floor so that we can get it out and over to the Senate. And I have a feeling that they'll be more than happy to pass it. I hope. Everything has to be with hope. So thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I appreciate you all allowing me to speak. And please, let's work together. Like I said, I'll be in judiciary. The hearing, we'll have our hearing. We have 50 witnesses. If there's anything that is coming up that you anticipate will come up, any arguments that you anticipate will come up, please feel free to work with me during the hearing and let me know. And like I said, I'll do everything I can to counter those arguments that are presented, because I have not heard an argument that is sound against this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as a complete aside, I'm from Beaufort County, North Carolina. So it's fun when I hear people would actually know where that is. So yeah. Thank you. Okay, so I think Delegate Stein, you pointed out we also have Delegate Terraza here this evening. So I just wanted to say welcome. I'm not sure if there's any other legislators that are here that we've missed. There are, I think we're looking at 56 participants at the moment, so that's fantastic. Liz, I think, is going to help field questions. She may already have a list queued up there, and if you have more questions, please drop them in the chat, and we'll see what we can do from there.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate our thanks to all of our presenters today. You guys have done such a lovely job, and we again are so grateful to Senator Smith, Delegate Stein, and Delegate Bartlett for your leadership on this. And again, Melissa Wiley and the whole Jaelynn Wiley family. This is, again, Jaelynn's law. So I just want to acknowledge that. With questions, one of the first questions we had was really an advocacy question, not so much about CAP specifically, but more about advocacy. The question is, to the delegates and Senator Smith, what is the best way right now for advocates to remotely, virtually advocate? In the past, we've been able to flood the Senate. And I will give a shout out here to our Moms Demand Action folks. They've done a beautiful job with their red shirts, getting people down to the Maryland General Assembly. We can't do that this year. So from your perspective as legislators, what do you feel is the best way for our members to make sure that their representatives are prioritizing this and other bills that are near and dear to them?
I'll go ahead and start. Oh, okay. Dana, did you go?
No.
Okay. Okay. So one thing in the House side, we are allowed up to 50 witnesses. Now that's 50 total. So I'm not sure how we're going to do it if we have, a large amount of opposition, but with dividing that 50. I think that Moms Demand Action has been so prevalent, and those red shirts have been so prevalent that I'm hearing that some advocates are coming down and in their cars, they are just, driving around in their cars. So if there's, if you almost want to do some form of a parade type action when we are voting, because the House will not be present after tomorrow. We'll go in tomorrow, we'll have our opening day, and then after that, we probably won't be present in our in the building until somewhere in early February or mid-February. But when we're voting, it's always helpful to know that there are folks out there who are advocating for a particular bill. While the bill is being heard, written testimony is always helpful because we don't have a cap on written testimony, I believe. But you do need an account, an MGA account on the General Assembly website, and you use that account to sign up to be a witness. So that's how things are on the House side. And if Delegate Stein has anything else he wants to add, please feel free. But I know it's very different on the Senate side.
I'll say this: for the Senate, look, we have a limit of 4 against and 4 proponents and 4 opponents. But absent that, I want to say, obviously, all of the advocacy from all of the gun safety groups, and especially Marylanders Prevent Gun Violence. I mean, you've always been very refined and nuanced and well researched, and so I would say continue to be that way. And so the best and most efficient way, especially under COVID conditions, is that if you can find out who your delegate or your senator is and target that person directly, the message should be more refined, because form letters are great. But one thing I thought that Marylanders has always been good at was just making sure that you find that nuance, and so that the message is crafted specifically for that senator or that delegate in that district. And so if you know that you have a critical member that's, is your senator or your delegate, you please approach them. I don't say pressure, I say support. Some people just need the right support and the right background information. And so if you encourage my colleagues that, you think maybe on the fence or teetering, then I'd suggest, supporting that individual. Now, as Liz knows, and Karen, we usually have a whip count. So for my committee, I don't put a bill on the list without knowing exactly where all the votes are. And so for me, I get 3 basic calculations. One is, can I get it out of committee? And then can I get 24 on the floor? And then can I get 29 on the floor to override a veto? So we will have that intel that we can pass along to Marylanders, and then they can disseminate that information back to you all so that you can make that more refined and targeted support approach. But I'd say emails, social media, phone calls, best way to do it. I actually would dissuade you from coming down physically, because we're still very much in the midst of a pandemic, and you're not going to be allowed inside the complex. In the Senate, we are going to be there every day, so we'll be there on campus just because we're a smaller body. But I would dissuade you from coming down. Stay safe, and stay remote. But that doesn't mean your message can't get through, and it means it won't get through. So yeah, I think that'll be an effective way.
Thank you. Delegate Stein, do you have any additions to those?
Just one quick addition. Of course, as we all know, there won't be the traditional lobby nights where everyone can try to meet as many committee members or their hometown delegate or senator. But in this era of virtual hearings and virtual meetings like tonight's, I wouldn't be shy about, especially if it's a delegate or senator whom about requesting a Zoom meeting. You could, and maybe with a few other advocates, in lieu of having a 20-minute meeting in someone's office, request a 20-minute Zoom meeting. I imagine we're all going to be, as much as we've learned to know and love, or maybe not love Zoom and the other platforms, we're going to be doing a fair amount of that this coming session. So I would say don't be shy about making requests like that.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. We had another question here about the chance of passage in the House. And I know Senator Smith spoke earlier about how the bill made it so close last year. So I just want to highlight that. But how optimistic are you all about this bill making it through, and the chances of the governor, the fear of veto?
I will defer more to Delegate Bartlett since she's a member of the Judiciary Committee. But I'll just say that I think there is a good chance that we'll be successful in the House. And, there have been a fair number of discussions during the interim. And so I think I won't say cleared the way at all. I shouldn't say that, but I mean, that's improved the odds. So Delegate Bartlett, since you know the committee much better than me.
Yes, I do know the committee. We just got a new member who is from the Eastern Shore to our committee, and we lost someone who would have voted favorably on this particular bill. I am a deputy majority whip, so I do whip the votes in my committee, but quite frankly, I can't say on this. I just don't know. I will, like I said, I will do everything I can to ensure that to beg. I'm willing to beg for this bill to get a vote out of committee. I hate to say it, but my influence is not, it's not there yet. I can try, and I will try. I'm going into my third year, and I will ask the questions. I will highlight the weaknesses of the arguments, because I know that some people have said that the bonding with guns, that was one of the things that came up last year. So I will highlight the weaknesses. I am an attorney, so I know how to try to counter arguments, but I just don't know. I'm not in that back room, so unfortunately, I just don't know.
I think we'd all would like to have a crystal ball, right? One thing I did want to mention, and I failed to, is that we will be having a virtual lobby day, sort of speaking to what Delegate Stein was saying about the ability to speak to our legislators. And I think one of the best ways to make sure we can ensure the passage of this bill is by doing that. Marylanders Prevent Gun Violence will have that virtual lobby day next Thursday with March for Our Lives. Jackson has been doing amazing work getting that in order, and I just want to sort of shout out to her. She's done a great job. So an email went out from both organizations within the last 2 days about that, so you can sign up for that. One more question we have is, how do you guys how do you see the enforcement of this law taking place? Like, how, for those of you who are lawyers, do you have a sense of how we could actually enforce this law and make sure it works properly?
Well, I'll just say that the way I envision it is actual, analysis by the fact finder in the judiciary. I think we're gonna need the help of the judiciary to determine what is, a reasonable way to secure, and whether or not the way that the person secured or failed to secure their gun was reasonable. So I personally think that in knowing that in a juvenile, because there was one example, I think someone said last session, the question was something along the lines of, well, if I leave my I may leave my 15-year-old to watch my children, and they have they're responsible enough to do that. But if an intruder comes in, a young person wants to protect, the folks who are left there, the children who are there, or the children they're babysitting, then they're not allowed to go get that gun. I think there's going to be some nuances that will be allowed, but that's going to be up to the judiciary. Again, I think the law needs to be in place, and the interpretation of the law, I'd like to leave that, for the judiciary to do their job, so we can work together.
I'd say that I mean, just like anything else, I mean, the enforcement is going to have to be, our law enforcement officers will do that, and it'll get road tested, as Delegate Bartlett alluded to earlier on in her comments. It'll get road tested. I'm sure it'll be challenged in the courts. But just looking here, I mean, the most controversial issue, it's not really a constitutional or like a legal issue. It's just a policy issue, which is that you're shifting from a fine to, for a reoffender, you're now having, a criminal penalty with jail time. And so that is the policy decision. But with respect to the constitutionality or, any other of those issues, those other legal issues, I think it's more of a policy kind of discussion than anything else, than a like a legal or a constitutional issue. But it'll be enforcement. Look, I mean, if you read the bill, you see that it is more than reasonable, and it is set up such that someone is on notice the first time with a fine, and a second time. So I mean, it's a more than reasonable piece of legislation, and I think very sound policy. So look. Sure, it'll be challenged, just as red flag laws were challenged before that, as we most recently found. So, I mean, it'll make its way through, but I think ultimately it's sound legal policy and policy.
Thank you. Delegate Stein, I wanted to ask you this one because I think you probably have the longest tenure here in the Maryland General Assembly. And one of the questions one of our participants has asked is, do you have any insight on how to lobby against the bad bills? That's one of the things we're really proud of here at Marylanders Prevent Gun Violence. We do focus on fighting the bad bills as well. And we know that there's a couple times where they've almost slipped through. And I know you've had a long time seeing these bad bills, and just wondered if you had any insight on the best ways, if there are any ways that we can better fight these bad bills we see every year.
Yeah, I guess I would say where you can look at a bill and envision how it would be implemented in a way that creates an unintended consequence, or just even a foreseeable consequence, which is negative. The more sort of concrete you can be in talking about the way a bill could be implemented, and based on your knowledge of similar situations, how there could be, again, maybe an unintended outcome which a sponsor or someone who might be inclined to support a bill couldn't have anticipated. That's, at least for me, that's the best way. There have been times when, probably more times than I care to acknowledge, where I've seen a bill, it's seen the summary of it, and thought, okay, well, this sounds like a good idea. But then when really you talk about implementation of it, and and maybe it's a question of equity as well, in terms of whether it have a disproportionate income on low-income people or individuals of color. I think that, to me, that's the best way to sort of lobby against what you might say is a bad bill.
Thank you. And our last question for the night, as we are wrapping up closely to the 8:30 hour here, we have a participant who's interested in understanding whether or not if any of the graduated penalties include the need for home insurance or rescinding of insurance if the unlocked gun in the home ends up in an injury. Is there suppose we could all answer that, but I'll hand it over. Karen, I don't know if maybe you want to take that one. You know you and I went over the graduated penalties a good bit today.
Yeah, and if one of the legislators wants to speak out, certainly please do. The bill does not address home insurance. I'm not an expert on home insurance, to be honest with you, so I don't know if that can help cover your criminal fees. I wouldn't think so if that was the case. So I think the answer is probably no. The bill does not tackle the question of civil penalties, which I know a lot of people would like to see something done with, but is a particularly complicated amendment to the current law. And while, I suppose someday we might like to address that, I think it would drown it if we tried it this year. So it does not tackle anything having to do with the civil penalties, and the punishments that are in the bill are fines and jail time in various mixes based on the harm that's actually caused. I don't know does that answer the question?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to the issue of the graduated.
No, I think Karen's absolutely right, but the issue is silent on insurance, because that is a separate issue. I mean, that's a separate issue that's been discussed for years in the General Assembly and throughout the nation, which is making sure that the gun owners insurance, people will say it's akin to car insurance. And so if you have a car, then you've got, that's been an idea that's been kicked around, but it is not short of controversy and does get very convoluted and difficult. I think personally it's probably a good idea, but it's a different, separate issue. The graduated penalties here deal with civil fines and levels of potential jail time for reoffenders. So.
That's great.
And I think we know that whenever we bring lawyers into a bill amendment, it turns into something overly complicated anyway. I speak as a lawyer. So.
And I did just want to bring in one last question that was just brought up, because we do have a little bit of time, and that is, are there any provisions in the bill to educate? And I do think this speaks to a little bit about what we talked about with the sort of boom in sales that we've seen in Maryland, and the fact that so many of these people are first-time buyers. But the bill itself does not have a provision about education or securing of weapons.
No, and I'm sort of assuming that's going to fall to organizations like our organization and Moms Demand Action if we can, what the chances of getting some of the hunter and safety groups on board to help educate gun buyers as they actually purchase their weapons. But no, it is not part of this legislation itself. There's no funding for educating. There's no specific section that does that.
Yeah.
Karen,
So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, since Karen mentioned the hunters, I did want to say that that we've taken great pains to make sure that the hunting community is fine with this bill, because there is a provision in here that says that if someone, if a minor has gotten a certificate of firearm and hunter safety under state law, that provided that they have the express consent of their parents, that they can have access to a gun. That was a big concern for the hunting community, and so we've worked out the language. So, someone says, well, does this prevent me from taking my son hunting, or my son going hunting if he has the right certificate? And the answer is no.
So again, I just want to thank Senator Smith, Delegate Stein, Delegate Bartlett, Jaelynn Wiley's family, Melissa Wiley in particular, Dr. Hoops, Karen, who has really put this together, and our partners at March for Our Lives and the Critical Issues Forum. Clint, I'm sorry, Melissa just wanted to say something quickly. Yeah, Melissa, did you want to?
Yeah, what I really wanted to say to that response is about the hunting thing and the hunting certificate. And ironically enough, the shooter had done the hunting course. So that's where that fell through the cracks.
So
even-
Melissa, the way the new legislation works is
There
in
is something
addition
in
to
there.
having the certificate, the child would also have to have express permission for hunting. So, and it could, I mean, I guess this, like Delegate Bartlett was saying, it would have to be a question for the judiciary, but I think the vision is that it wouldn't be some sort of blanket permission. It would be, they have express permission to go out at such and such a time with their license to go hunting. So it does add an added layer of allowing the hunting, but still adding some protection there.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to clear that one up. So yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you guys for attending. Again, we will be having this virtual lobby day next Thursday. If you haven't seen the RSVP, please feel free to send me an email at liz@mdpgv, and I can make sure you get it. But again, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next Thursday, if not before then. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Have a good one.
Thank you.